All right, we're live.
Well, all right. This is Zoe Ellis, and you are listening to the Break It Down show.
Zoe Ellis is a singer in the Bay Area, based right here close by in Berkeley. And she is somebody I've been an enormous fan of for, let's see, what must it be? Approximately 23, 24 years?
Got to be. I'll be 50 in June, and I started out there hanging out with you cats when I was about 20.
Oh, my goodness.
It's been a minute, John.
It's been a minute. It's been a minute. Well, yeah. I will say this because I was a fan of you back then. And then, of course, people get busy and they get lives and they make babies and they raise them. And I think I lost track of you for a good 15 years. But I always said, boy, I wonder whatever happened to Zoe Ellis. She must be singing around here somewhere.
Yep, always singing around here somewhere. That is always true.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then at some point you showed up where I could see you on our friend Daryl's album in the band.
That's right.
Soul.
That's right.
And that was spectacular. And my observation of that was this. Way back when we were kids, because when you were 20, we're about the same age. Mm-hmm. The thing that really made that made me a fan of you was not just that you have a voice that's unique and that's soulful and that's captivating, but you also wrote in a way that spoke to all of us differently. You had a perspective that was very valuable and really mature. I mean, you were 20 years old writing songs about the emotions around young relationships, things like that. You wrote candidly about sex.
I did.
You wrote candidly about love, about expectations. And so part of that was for a young man, an education in the sophistication of a young woman's feelings.
Huh.
And that was really heavy. Fast forward to your songwriting in Agape Soul, and what has remained constant is your insight. What has changed is your experience.
That's go on and say it, John.
No.
That is true, friend. That is very true.
Yeah.
Yep. That was very high praise, old friend. That is very high
every
praise.
Word of it.
I certainly I'm not shy about being honest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's interesting. You're the first person to say you wrote candidly about sex. Funny, because at the time, that is not what I remember people saying about the stuff I was writing, but that is certainly true. That is what was happening.
What were they saying?
I don't know. I mean, because specifically we're talking about the writing I did in the Mofessionals, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, here's what I would say. The Mofessionals, I think, at least this is my understanding. And remember, I'm in a weird vacuum because I'm in the band, not outside the band. You know how that is very well. That the Mofessionals wasn't a song or a lyric outside of all the punk MF to the back or who likes the bass, right?
Yeah.
It was an experience, right? It was a great place to take a first date.
Yeah.
Because I didn't wear a whole lot of makeup and I didn't dress up a whole lot. I just was barefoot in, jean shorts and a sports bra, like doing whatever with Caitlin. And so it was a great place for a first date, and it was a community hang. So I didn't get a lot of conversation with anyone actually at the time about what I was writing about. People tended to lean more on Chris Berger, the MC, for the content. But you're absolutely right. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe people were really listening to what I was saying, John, because if you were, somebody of your caliber was listening, then I'm going to guess that other people were listening. So yeah, I was in fact writing very candidly about sex, about civil rights, about the planet falling apart when I was 20, 21. So.
Well, certainly Chris Berger was writing lyrics that had to do with social commentary. I mean, absolutely. Maybe hotter button issues, especially for young people.
Yeah.
Because he was you know, he was at State studying with Wade Nobles and all that stuff. That's all really very, you know, that stuff turns everybody on.
Yeah. And we were both good Berkeley kids, John, right? So,
yeah, right.
We were both raised in an environment where
you say what you have to say.
Yeah, it's not, well, it's also just not an option not to be an ally. Like, that's not a choice. It's just part of the unfolding of being a Berkeley kid. You are, and I'm sure that's true for lots of other places, but this is my only experience. So, but you don't get to be quiet, you know?
Yeah. Well, that sounds pretty accurate. Now, even though you're not quiet in a setting that's not professionals, I think, you know, you certainly would have been making a message that would have found a slightly different audience, and that audience would have been a little more into the message specifically. But because you were reaching a wider professionals audience, it was a lot easier to pay attention to the verses. Whereas you sang the choruses a lot, or I guess I mean to say, since you were dealing with melody more than you were dealing with, you know, he's rapping faster than you. He can say more words. He can cram more content into a song. But even back then, when I remember specifically, I saw you guys open for
Fungo Mungo.
Well, yes, but the experience that I'm thinking of was a show in San Jose, and you guys opened for Third World.
Wow.
You remember that?
You know, I remember almost all the San Jose shows because I was totally fascinated with San Jose when I was that age. Because I grew up in Berkeley, where like you smiled at another woman when she walked down the street, just kind of like in a gesture of hello, and it was reciprocated. And the first time I went to San Jose, I tried that, and I got a lot of pushback. Like, "What's your problem? What are you looking at me? What? Why?" And I was like, "Wait, what? We don't do that? That's not what you do?" Yeah, I remember almost all my San Jose shows. It's very different now, but back then I found it a very complicated place to hang out. We opened for Roger and Zapp out there too, and Shirley Murdoch. Oh my God. Yeah. What happened at this Third World show?
That show, I brought a friend who was kind of a mentor to me, who was older. You know, we were 20 at the time. She was probably like in her early 30s. And her name was Leanne. Yeah. And I brought her specifically to check you out.
Oh.
Because I wanted to hear how your lyrics connected with her. I didn't think she would digest Chris, you know, quite the same way I did, but I thought she would digest you on a different level, and I wanted to see what happened there. And it worked. She came away from there going, "Man, I really, you know, loved what I heard. It's great to hear somebody who's engaging with their experience and sharing it the way that you were." That was her observation, and I was like, "Okay, well, I'm kind of on the money. Maybe I get maybe some of these chicks will see that I'm insightful about this." It didn't happen, but
you turned out just fine.
I did okay. So the thing about that was that it kind of reinforced what I thought was going on, which was that you had a message that was valuable, and somebody who had a little more experience than I did, was able to reinforce that notion with me. So there.
How about that?
Yeah.
Well, you know, there's so many doorways to this conversation, John, because I look back on it now and I think often, who the hell did I think I was? You're right, to write that stuff, you know, like I had some real nerve, which is strange, right? Because I was just as insecure as the next girl walking down the street about what I looked like or how I sounded or what I said or what people would think of what I did, you know, like you do in your early 20s. And but singing and performing and making a space maybe where other women could feel safe was more important to me than the fear, which I do think has remained consistent for me, that go ahead and be scared and be insecure and then make the move anyway. So it's interesting to hear your perspective, John. It really is. Because I mean, one, it's helpful and I'm really grateful to hear that impact was real for you. And it gives me a lot to think on. I'll be interested to see what I dream this evening with that kind of validation.
I hope you do think about it, because I was in the
Yeah.
crowd and I was not alone.
Yeah, no, and yeah, again, so many doorways, man. Like yeah, this is total sidebar, but I've had men say to me much later in life, I really wanted to ask you on a date, but I figured you'd say no. And I, like, every time I'm pretty gracious and I want to say, the thing is, I was so single so much of the time. I really wish some of you had just asked. But I never didn't feel good about what we were doing. Ever. I never didn't feel good about my lyrics. I was never embarrassed or ashamed. I put out there exactly what I wanted heard, and took the hits as they came, right?
Well, that was the magical thing, and I'm not going to spend an entire hour talking about the Professionals, but I do want to go over this in some amount of substance, because this I don't think this has been fleshed out properly. So the thing that you guys were, for those of us, and I'm speaking for the fan community, I have no right to speak for everybody else's experience, but none of them are here, so I'm gonna. But I often describe the Professionals as if Public Enemy was Tower of Power in Berkeley at age 20.
Huh.
Because you guys delivered a musical experience that was very special. You delivered an emotional experience. Like you said, great place to take a first date. I don't know if I ever took first dates to see the Mo's. I know that my wife and I have been married for a long time now, 24 years. It'll be 25 this year.
All right.
And before we got married, we were together for 6 years. So I know that we went to Mo's shows together.
I believe that.
And we had a great time with the other people who were on dates.
Yeah.
In the crowd.
That's real, man. It was a good place to be a couple and to hang out and go out as a crew. We had a lot of crews that came together to the shows. That's very real. We're talking about.
That's cool, because you got to. Oh yeah, that's cool, because you got to attract more people.
Yeah,
I mean, you convince one person to go and they bring their crew of 6.
That's so true, John. That was one of my favorite things about the show, is being on stage and looking out and being able to see. I know that crew, and that that you knew if one of them was there, it was likely that the rest were there. Yeah, that was fun, man.
Yeah, and then we kind of operated as a community too.
I felt that
I
way.
didn't know those crews, but you could see that. Oh yeah, I remember you.
Yep.
And I had that experience at the Professionals reunion.
Totally. So did I.
Man,
people. What was deep was the one that we did for was it the Fillmore Jazz Festival, when we went out there just this last couple years ago, the last show that we did? And it was a street fair, so there was just, the whole block was full of people.
Yeah.
And there were no people I didn't know. Like it was the only time Lily was ever going to see me do the Professionals, and I couldn't even take 2 steps without seeing the other crew or the other group. It was great.
That's awesome.
We're all really aware of that. Let me say that about the Mo's. Everyone in the group is aware how good we had it. Chris Berger and I talk about that all the time. Mike Marshall and I were just talking about how good we had it. I mean, their life wasn't quite as busy, obviously, and it was in some ways, but like we rehearsed 4 and 5 nights a week for 4 and 5 hours at a time because we could. Right. And that's really why it sold what it did, because we were rehearsing all the time.
Yeah.
But I want to back up just a tiny bit, because I would be remiss if I did not. But the Professionals were not new to what they were doing, right? Like, the bottom line is, if the Freaky Executives hadn't existed in the Bay Area, the Professionals don't exist in the Bay Area, the Los Angelitos don't exist in the Bay Area. Like, none of it happens unless the band before us did it, right? So you said Tower of Power, so you reach all the way back there, then you come all the way up front to the Professionals. But there's nobody in the group who isn't brutally aware of that. Like, for me, it was the Freaky Executives and the Uptones, right? Because my brother Dave was a saxophone player in the Uptones, and his best friend Jay Lane was playing drums in the Freakies. Yeah. And all those first gigs I went to, John, where you see a pack of people be symbiotic on stage like that, like that's I mean, I fell into the Mofessionals almost entirely by accident, but that is what I thought was right. You know, Earth, Wind, and Fire is what's right. You should be able to support 13, 16 people on stage and a full horn section and two guitars and two keys. Like, I still in my heart wish that we could support that on stage. But of course, the cost of living hasn't changed. You still get the same amount of money. But the older I get, the more I'm sure, like everybody else, I look back on the gift that was getting into Berkeley Square, pretending to be my brother's roadie, even though I was underage, carrying his saxophone in, and then watching the the Uptones play, and then the Freak Executives, and then Fishbone.
Yeah.
Right. And how, like, having some sense of like, oh, that's how that works. Oh, I want to be in that sound. I want to be an instrument in that sound. Just one. And I think that for me sort of summarized the most. It's just one thing. We were all instruments in one thing. Nobody was a star. Nobody was the best. We didn't really function without all of us together. Yeah. So, and I saw that happen because of groups like the Freakies and the Uptones, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the Freakies would have been great with Piero or Scotty, but with Piero and Scotty, they are,
right. So greater than the sum of their parts.
Yeah. Say that again.
I said greater than the sum of your parts.
That's exactly right.
The other thing was everybody in the Mo's was selfless. It seemed like everybody wanted to. And I'm sure that's not the constant band dynamic because it never is. But on stage, there was.
Yeah.
It seemed like people wanted to pass the rock.
Yes, I think that on stage, that is what it looked like. Yes, we did have our, fussing around that. And actually, I think Chris would be perfectly okay with the fact that he and I, we are clearly brother and sister, and we argue like siblings as well. But we definitely had our moments where, everybody was in the same zone where we were learning. And I had been lucky enough to watch what it looked like for people to pass the rock, as you say. And not everybody in the band had, and I certainly didn't necessarily do a better job than anybody else, but I was very much about being fair and respectful. And, we were young and people were drinking and smoking and doing all kinds of stuff. And sometimes you lose track of yourself on stage, like that. But I will say, for me, that's where every single one of those lessons was learned, John. I mean, did I step on a solo that Eric was about to play? Absolutely. Why? Because I wasn't listening. Did it happen again? Yes. Does it happen anymore? Probably not. Yeah. Because I got it all out there, right? And I think the same would be true of just about anybody. Them learning to play with a singer, me learning to be with an MC, which proved to be one of the single most important sets of relationships in my life, right? And that's a whole nother conversation about how I feel about the MCs that I've worked with. But yeah, I think our intention always was good and that we did want to pass the rock, but we learned how to do that together and we fought about it for sure.
Well, in order to learn how to pass it, you first have to learn how to handle it.
There you have it. Come on and say that again, John.
At age 12.
Is that a Bible? Is that a verse? That John 1:20 says, in order to pass the rock,
you gotta learn how to handle it.
So
all of that happening simultaneously among the, depending on what night, 13 of you, that's not an easy thing to navigate. And you manage to do it and entertain us all at the same time. Yeah. Not only entertain us, but there are a lot of other musical creators in the crowd. And a lot of us, here's where I will speak for everybody. A lot of us were there because we coveted what you guys had.
Right on, man.
Thanks. I mean, it's the same reason we watch Tower of Power, we watch Earth, Wind, and Fire, because you look at it and you go, man, that must just be magical.
Yeah.
Right after they get done choking each other, it must be magical.
Actually, I should back up. I'm going to say that happened outside of the moment. Because once the Mo's were on stage, you're absolutely right. We were just having a good time.
Yeah.
And it did feel a little like floating, because the audience was so deep into it. I will say, and Daryl will actually back me up on this because he and I had a moment like this on stage too, because I was slightly hot-headed, not so much, ever so slightly hot-headed. That I remember once way back early in the Mo's, Nick was playing a guitar solo at like 27. He had just cranked himself all the way up. And I was like, yeah, nah. And I just unplugged him. And he just never even noticed. There's actual footage of me unplugging him, and he just didn't even notice. He just kept playing, and I was like, "Yeah, see, this is the problem. I'm totally unaware." We talked about it years later. He was like, "Yeah, I earned that one. That was good."
Okay.
No, but you're absolutely right. Once the Professionals were in the music and with the audience, it was about as good as it gets, man. About as good as it gets.
At the time, I had, let's see, if I was about 20, my brother was about 16, and I would tell him about shows that he couldn't get into. And eventually I got to drag him to one because it was an all-ages show at Slim's. And it was the show where I think the bass player from the Incline proposed to you on stage. I'm sorry to bring up old shit. Anyway.
Yeah, you know what's really nutty about that moment? My grandfather, my mom's father, who was already, see, I would have been 23, 24. So my grandpa was already in his 90s. And he made it out to that show. He was sitting in the balcony of that show. This is a man born in 1899 from a small town in Russia, who then immigrated to England and then eventually made it to Israel and then here to the United States to be with my mom. And he made it to my Professional show. And I was ecstatic. You know, he was sitting in the balcony. He had his little pen flashlight. So when I'd say something about him, he'd flash it at me. So I knew he was listening. And then Stephen proposed and I was standing with my grandfather and he looked at me and I was like, no. That was a hell of a night. Stephen Smart is his name. And he's still, Incline is playing again, actually. They're playing a fabulous drummer, incredible band.
Good for them. They are a terrific band.
They are fantastic.
They were a terrific band, and I'm glad to hear that they still are.
Yeah, no, they are so good. I still listen to Incline regularly, and he is a fantastic drummer. Not a good moment to propose to me, though. Not so hot. Thanks for throwing that out there, John.
Great crowd moment, though. We were all like, okay, he just went for it. What just
You weren't
happened?
alone. You weren't alone in that. I was like, okay. My mother was like, what the hell? I was like, I don't know.
That's just Showtime stuff.
Yeah.
Showtime.
Yeah.
Okay. So now let's move forward. What happened first of all to the Moes? How did it
I think a couple things happened. The band lineup changed. People's lives were changing. It was 8 years strong. We went 8 years strong.
Wow.
Which is pretty good, actually, all things considered. And I like to think that people's lives were just changing.
Yeah.
But I do totally, absolutely, I'm got to be super honest about the fact that 2 projects landed into my lap. One of them was Cleveland Lounge, which I absolutely loved. And I started working on that project and started to see, after 8 years, I started to see the possibility of doing other things too. You know, I just got older. And then the braids happened totally by mistake. And that took both Caitlin and I to some degree just out of the picture.
Wow.
And I mean, I'm guessing, but I would venture to say that at least some of the Moes feel like that's what ended the crew, is that Caitlin and I got busy doing that project. So, yeah, so that's real. That took up a lot of time for a while there.
Yeah. Well, that while other people have different expectations pulling on them and stuff.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's amazing that you guys were 8 years strong.
Yeah.
I have some good friends who live in Oakland, Dave and Laura Miller. And Dave Miller and I worked together and we socialized because we we figured out that our wives both like to take us out dancing and we love live music. So here's where this story goes.
Okay, I'm ready. If you're going to bring up the marriage thing, God knows where this goes.
This is pretty mild, but it's funny. We went to Luca to see Agape Soul.
Was I there?
Yeah.
I played at Luca with Agape Soul?
Yeah.
I have no memory of ever doing a gig at Luca. I think I've been in that building one time to go dancing.
It was in the beer garden around back.
Oh, cool. Okay. Was I 9 months pregnant?
No.
Okay.
No, this was not that long ago. When was it? Anyway.
Okay.
This is what happened. We were there enjoying our dinner, waiting for the band to play, and you guys started, and you started, and then Laura just had this look on her face.
That wasn't Luca. That was in Benicia.
Yeah, at Luca, the name of the venue is Luca's Beer Garden.
Oakland, because you said your friends were in Oakland. No, okay, yeah, no, I remember that
Yeah.
gig well. Right, that's where we reconnected.
Yes. So she said, yes, she's the one. She bought all your. She went down and was like, "Oh my God," and bought CDs from you.
It was great.
Yeah, it was. But first, she didn't. I mean, she just came because we were gonna see some music, and then she had this look on her face, and she goes, "I've heard that voice before."
Yeah, that's
and
right.
I said, "Yeah, that's Zoe Ellis," and she said, "She was in the Mofessionals."
Ta-da!
I said, "She sure was."
Loudmouth, yeah.
And so that was my. I had a moment with Laura that evening.
I like that story,
and that was a lot of fun. But she had a similar observation to me, because then she started really tuning in on what you were singing.
Oh yeah.
And she said that she was talking about her experience as a music fan, and she felt like she kind of aged out of a lot of different kinds of music in her 20s. And that she kind of came back. So that's what made her excited, was that she said, you know what? It's like our paths are parallel.
Yeah.
And the things that matter to me, she seems to be singing about again.
Yeah. How about that?
So, yeah.
Growing up together is real.
Yep. That's pretty cool.
No, that is very cool. I love that part of the story. Growing up, that's wow. Yeah, it's going to be interesting dreams tonight, John.
Yeah. So let me ask, though, let me rewind halfway.
Yeah.
Between there. What were you doing halfway between there? Because that's when I didn't see what you were up to.
Which is interesting, because I was gigging the whole time.
The whole time.
That's interesting. Yeah. So the Mofessionals ended when I was about 27, 28.
Wow.
I spent from 26 to 28, I guess, 25 maybe. So 26 to 28, I kind of did a bunch of the braid stuff and dealt with that situation. But right around the end of the Mo's, like within a couple of years, I was like, oh, I need to know what I sound like. And so I started doing cover gigs, but not the traditional sort of, cover band gig, but instead I had no idea if I could sing anybody else's music. I was both lucky and unlucky that the Mofessionals was always original music. I came out the gate. I had no idea that I could or couldn't write. It's just I walked into their rehearsal and they were like, well, we don't have any melodies or lyrics. And I was like, okay. I didn't know any better. So I just started writing. So I thought, well, I don't actually know what my voice can do. I just know myself as another instrument in this large conglomerate. So what happens if it's just me? Can I carry a show? I have no idea. So I started singing things I wanted to sing, just to see what my voice was capable of. And I spent probably 3 or 4 years doing, you remember that club Circadia? It was a trial run for a Starbucks in Potrero Hill, and they put a little stage in the corner and made it more kind of cafe style. And they used to have music on the weekends, and I loved it there. And I had a chance to do almost 2 years in that spot, not as a residency, but just I got lucky and they booked me in regularly because I pulled crowds. Which was for me really telling, because of course, once you walk away from a band like that, you wonder,
could you do?
What can I do? Right. So I think one of the nice things about the Mo's, and also just being my brother's little sister, let me just put that out there, being Dave Ellis's little sister is not small. My sense of that the players that I'm with should be better than me at all times has always been true. It's always been true. And so I don't have any fear of asking. The worst people can say is no. And I got lucky in some cases. I met both Daryl Anders and Cedric Dennis in Cleveland Lounge in a rehearsal.
Okay.
Folks like Joel Griffin, Nate Pitts, Tommy Bradford, where I would just be like, want to come play? Like, I don't really know what's going to happen, but let's go see what happens. And I ended up with these players who were so damn good, John, they just pushed me and pushed me. And I figured out that I could carry a show by myself if I needed to. And so I did that for a long time. I picked up a lot of studio work for many years, and I'm really proud of the record collection that lives in my house of albums that I participated in. I feel like that's, in some ways, that's part of what I leave behind that I'm most proud of, is how many times the phone rang and people said, hey, I just need that solo voice to do this section or do these backups or something. And I'm really proud of that work. So I never stopped working. And Daryl was playing with me on and off for years, and vice versa. So let's see, how many years is that? So I went through my 30s pretty much doing those kinds of gigs. Then totally randomly, sidebar, I ended up in this a cappella group called Slammin', all body band with Keith Terry, Steve Hogan, Destiny Wolf, Kenny Washington. I mean, shit, man, Kenny Washington. Sorry, can I swear on the show?
You
Pete?
can go
Okay.
crazy.
So, somebody threw me on stage with Kenny Washington and said, okay, now improv. Like, well, shit. Let me. I mean, if I wanted to be in a room with somebody who's better than me, give me Kenny Washington.
Yeah, you asked for it.
Destiny Wolf, right? Steve Hogan. It was really something. And my chops, I mean, thank God I had spent that time in Daddy Goddess, which is this weird offshoot of the Mofessionals, right? Where we never rehearsed and it was all improv. I had some sense of what it meant to do it, but I ended up in Slammin', which then eventually led me to Soufuil and that whole world of a cappella music. Soufuil was Bobby McFerrin's voicestra until he decided to leave, and he kept the name. And so I've been in Soufuil now for, I don't know, 10 some odd, 12, 15 years. I don't even know now, a really long time. I spent a lot of time on the road with them. And
again, a whole different muscle.
And, somewhere, Andy Gilbert. Do you know Andy Gilbert? Andrew Gilbert. He's a writer. He's a music lover and a writer in the Bay Area. And he's sort of my litmus for what I've done and how and why, because he always shows up in my life. He's a phenomenal human being and lover of live music. And he always shows back up and does a new piece and be like, hey, let's do an interview and talk about where you're at right now. And one year he did one, and I'm going to say this is just before Lily came along. And he said, well, what do you want to do? I said, I want to learn from the best in the Bay Area. I want to do anything I can to learn from the best in the Bay Area. And so far, that continues to work out. I landed in Soufuil, which landed me eventually the gig singing with Linda Tillery in the Cultural Heritage Choir. And there is no better human to sit next to if you want to know more about what you're capable of. And a cappella music will certainly strip away the bullshit, John.
Yeah, right.
Whether or not
you got nothing.
Hang, either you can hang or you cannot, because there's no breaks and there's no covering anything up. So, and I feel like that's been the joy for me this whole time, is like when I got the call for Slammin', and I tell this story a lot, Keith Terry called and said, hey, I got your name from so-and-so, and I have this band. And actually, Vicki Randall was in the seat that they were asking me to take over, but she got the gig in LA, right? So
the big one.
So we're kind of an a cappella, like beatbox, body music kind of thing. And I was in the kitchen shaking my head, like on the phone. And I was like, sure, man, sounds great. Because what am I doing? I don't know if I can hang on your gig. But damn, the phone rang, and I'll take a chance. So let me just take a chance.
Well, somebody recommended you. So
somebody recommended me. Come
others
on.
knew you could do it.
Yeah. Why
and
not?
When you get there and you start to do it, and you realize that, oh man, I got to punch above my weight. And here you are thrust yet into another situation where you got to flex a new set of muscles.
Yeah.
And you continue to challenge yourself. And now we're working on, let's see, you're talking about you're still in your 30s, right? And you're edging forward. And so keep going.
All right. So I'm in my 30s. And what happened? I think at one point, if I remember correctly, I was living alone in a really nice 2-bedroom flat, and I was in 5 regularly rehearsing, sometimes touring and gigging bands.
5 of them.
5 of them at the same time, which is like standard for people these days. I feel like people are in 1,000 bands, but at the time it felt like a really big deal. And
it's a lot to keep track of.
I remember a specific turn of events right around, it was a New Year's Eve when I think I was around 37. I did a restaurant gig with Lynette Williams. You know Lynette?
I don't.
Yeah, you do. Lynette plays keyboards for Layla Hathaway out here a lot, but she's Childish Gambino's keyboard player. And she gets all the gigs. She just recently got the Lizzo gig, and then we went into quarantine. But I had this moment of, and I'm guessing this is true for you too, but one of the nice things about music is that the age thing doesn't quite matter as much. I was young at one point, and somebody helped me figure out, you know, the Fred Rosses and Tony Lindsays were super loving and kind and helped to say, hey, kid, yes, hey, no. And I've got all these friends in the music business who are 10, 15, 20 years younger than me, as well as 10, 20, 15 years older than me. Mm-hmm. But there was a wonderful unfolding of some point of meeting an entirely new set of musicians that I had not met in the area yet. And this was really, I think, when I look back on it, it was like a big part of the church scene that I just hadn't met all the players, you know? And that changed the game for me a lot. There were a lot of people out there that I wanted to make music with. So right around 37, I'm going to say, I feel like a whole bunch of new musical relationships exploded. And I spent a lot of time in the wormhole, just listening to what the 20-something in Turkey is doing to make fusion now. What is he doing? And is it on YouTube? And can I watch it again? I spent a lot of time tripping off how much more information there was out there than I had realized. So
that's when the information explosion happened.
Oh yeah. And right. Of course, the internet does that to people. And hi baby, good? Okay. And I was deep in it. Singing all the time. My voice was my strongest muscle. I was having a fabulous time. I was less invested in whether or not there was a big audience than I was in whether or not I was holding my own in the groups I was hanging out with. And then, John, I had a baby. And so I gigged up until 2 weeks before she was born. On stage. She was really kind to me. She didn't sit on my diaphragm or anything, so I could breathe. And
she was kicking and remaining out of the way because she knew what was happening.
No, actually, I have to tell you something interesting. Actually, my last gig with Agape Soul before, it wasn't my last gig, but it was the last one before I ended up having Lil. I think it was about a week before my actual last gig. The sound was just terrible. And I mean, it was terrible. You remember the old days when you'd go to like the elbow room and the sound guy would have been on, crank for the last 4 days and then finally fall asleep on the board and just like push all the faders to the top. And you're just stuck with that for the rest of the night. It was that kind of sound. It's the only time on stage that Lily beat me up. Whenever I'd get on stage, she'd go completely still. But that night, it was like she was saying to me, okay, this is enough. I've had enough. This is terrible sound. We need to get out of here. But yeah, and then I guess 2 weeks, the last gig I did was with Soufuil on stage with for a reproductive health convention. Totally random. They thought and I was a room full of like gynecologists. And they were like, oh, that's really funny that you've got the pregnancy belly on. I was like, no, actually, I'm due like right now. So
any minute.
I was all like staging Robert Moses dance moves and like 9 months pregnant. I had Lily and I went back on stage 2 weeks later.
Wow.
Yeah. So there was no break. There's never been a break. I just may not have been gigging in the audience where you were sitting, John, but you didn't take any breaks, did you?
Yes, I took a big, long break. I only really started playing the drums again when we started this show. We found ourselves, I was chasing Tommy McElroy around. I wanted to get him on the show. And we had done like maybe just 2 or 3 episodes. We just put up episode 701.
Fantastic.
But
that's amazing. Well done, Pete.
Back when we had like, I think 4 episodes in the can, we found ourselves at Dwayne Wiggins' house.
Yeah.
And I was just trying to get you know, we were trying to get as many people as we could on the show, just get good guests. And he said, "Hey, what are you guys doing later?" Because it was like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and he said, "There's a rehearsal happening here tonight, and Levi Caesar is going to be here. If you guys know Levi." And I said, "No, but I want to meet him, so we'll come back."
Yeah, that's what's up.
So we went and got some chicken wings or something, and we came back. And I walked in there, and the band was still setting up, so we were just kind of pulled back and staying out of the way, and you know, met Levi and shook hands and all that stuff. Juan Escovedo was there. And
he's always there.
Yes. Well, he and I had played together years ago. And so I guess the drummer called, and the rehearsal was starting at 5 o'clock. And the drummer called and said he was stuck behind airport traffic on 980 or whatever. And he was going to be 15 minutes. And yeah, and I hadn't played the drums in easily 15 years.
Really?
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. You just said that, and I was like, oh, I did have one break. The year I got married, I took 1 year off of singing. That was it. There was one break. That was only 1 year, though. 15 years, 15 John?
Years, yeah.
I'm mad at
you. Just like dashboard and, you know, but all your chops and your everything just goes completely away.
Well, drumming is a whole different thing. I mean, yes, if you don't sing, you're going to have some trouble, but you can work that back in differently than actually pulling. You know how I feel about drummers, right?
Yes, I do.
They're the most important person in the band. So
it's a different kind of shape, but
I want to jump in and tell my part of the story here. First off, it was chicken wings. Don't let him fool you. He remembers absolutely. We went over to Wings Plus. He knows it. And we're sitting there minding our own business, trying not to be in the way like you're supposed to when you're a guest. And they're all trying to sort out this drummer thing. And then Juan looks at John, and they had exchanged less than 30 words.
Yeah.
He just said, "Remember that gig? Oh, yeah, I remember that gig. Oh, man, cool. See you later." Something like that. That was all it was. Juan points at John and says, "That guy plays the traps."
There you go.
Everybody left to go to their positions, and John was sold.
Done. You're like, I guess I'm back in the game, coach.
Yeah, exactly. So it was Juan who pulled me off the bench, and I'll forever be grateful.
I'm so glad he did.
But he pulled me off the bench to play with Levi.
Never done a gig with Juan. I just want to put that out there live.
Is that true? How is
He's
that
been on stage with my big brother. Every single friend I've got. I have never done a gig with Juan under any circumstances. I know.
That is a shame.
Isn't that sad?
It is. It is. Well, you know, when we get back to business and there's live music again.
How about that?
I'm sure that'll happen at some point soon.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, my reintroduction to the drums, I just sat there and just tried to, you know, play the backbeat and not mess anything up.
Yeah.
But I remember I was on the riser and I was playing and I was like, just trying to blow some cobwebs out and looking at the MD of that band, which was Levi Caesar. And I was like, there's no way this is not an omen. I have to get back.
That's right.
Get back to
Levi
it.
is the nicest cat, though, too.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're stepping in to help them rehearse, Levi, I mean, I've only done a few rehearsals and gigs with the cat because of Agape Soul.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that's a guy who's just gonna be like, hey, I really appreciate you sitting in, man. Thanks for helping us out. Like, you could have sucked. And he probably was like, man,
I'm positive he said something along those lines. And I was just probably mortified and walked away thinking, God, I'm just glad no disaster happened.
Nah. I'm sure there was no disaster. Right, Pete? There was no disaster.
No.
Right.
We met Leah that night, too.
Ticey.
One and only in that band, yeah.
She's wonderful.
You worked with her at Freight and Salvage recently.
I did, actually. I met Leah at Glide when I was singing there. I was there for about 6 years, and I met her and Vernon Bush there, actually. And I invited her. I had always wanted to try again with the just try something that you're not sure will go well or not. But there was this Alison Krauss record, this bluegrass record. It's got nothing to do with what people expect me to sing. But I had always wanted to try to sing that record down from the top because it's just so well done. It's just such a well-written, well-performed album. And, you know, country musicians don't play at all. Nashville doesn't play at all. Yeah. So, and then I decided it was not going to be as fun if I did it alone. So I was like, I know which two voices I want to try. And Leah said to me at one point that some of the tunes I gave her really were a stretch for her because she doesn't sing like that either. But she's just a pro. She's a good person and just a real friend. I really love her a lot. Yeah.
She is pretty lovable.
Yeah, I've known her a long time. It feels like now, anyway.
Yeah.
So to answer your first question, I'd never stopped singing. I didn't even stop once Lily was born. I did stop touring in earnest when she was about 15 months old. I got back off the road with Further, which was what was the rest of the Grateful Dead who were still touring, who I sang backs for quite some time. And there's not been a break since, which is how I like it.
Super, super busy. I guess I have a lot of catching up to do.
We do. I mean, honestly, you sent me a text earlier saying, you know, is there anything coming up? Daryl and I are writing. Daryl's writing like crazy. I'm really proud of him. He's really committed to Agape Soul. He and I are doing some writing.
Let's have a moment just real quick about Daryl. Because, man, I love that man so much.
Yeah.
He is his just soul emits love and warmth. Just sitting next to him, you know, when he just starts to talk about what he's creating and when he talks about collaborating, there's so much like gratitude in his voice. I mean, when he talks about you, when he talks about just working with the band and he's, you know, he's been very fortunate in all of the people you mentioned and all of the people that you guys have collaborated with and that he's drawn into the studio with you. Amazing.
Well, I mean, after all these years, it was about time for Daryl to start asking some folks. He had done enough on the scene. He had done enough. It was time. I need to tell you something. I hope Daryl's going to see this, and he knows exactly what I'm going to say right now, John.
Okay.
I am really glad that is your experience of Daryl Anders. He doesn't really like anybody, not in real life. He doesn't want anyone in his house. He doesn't really. You see, I'm leaning in to say this.
I see
you right now. That if that is what you're getting from Daryl, that's because it's true. That's because he really likes you. So he's telling you the truth about himself and how he feels. Because let me be real clear. Daryl has this many people that he considers close to himself, rightfully so. He keeps a real tight ship of people he's really close to. And he is sincere about how much he loves what he's doing and what he's getting to do with Agape Soul. And it's been one of the hardest things I know he's ever done. But if he's giving off that when he's sitting with you, John, that's because he really likes you.
Well, I appreciate that.
Throw that out there.
He has said as much, and I appreciate his compliments and yours. We were well introduced. I met Daryl through our dear friend Dave Agent.
Oh, okay.
And anytime I meet somebody from Dave Agent, you know, we become friends.
Okay, good. All right.
So the last time, in fact, we hung out with Dave Agent, we went to Cass Creek to see 5.0, which is Cornell Carter's band. And, you know, we love watching them. We were celebrating my wife's 50th birthday party.
Awesome.
We were standing out in the casino having some drinks because we had an hour or so before the show started. And, you know, we were just hanging out. And then my cousin Daryl, who plays bass, came up and he was with Dave. They rode in together. And then Rich Agwan came and we were sitting around having some drinks. And Dave looks over his shoulder and goes, "Is that Mike?" "I think that's Mike." And he taps Daryl. He goes, "Is that Mike?" And I didn't know who they were talking about or who they were. I was just looking in the crowd. And then I see a person off in the distance. And Dave Agent yells, "Mike!" And he turns around and it's Michael Cooper.
Oh.
So he comes walking over and he says, "What are you guys doing here?" And Dave says, "We're celebrating her 50th birthday party."
Yeah.
And Michael Cooper took my wife's hands in the middle of the casino floor and started singing happy birthday to her. And of course we all joined in. But then I looked around and I realized like Dave has created this moment.
Yeah.
The casino stopped and was there for the singing of this happy birthday. And I was like, okay. And then you know, we all disperse and we all hug and see you guys later. And I said, you just got sung happy birthday to by Michael Cooper. And she was like, that was kind of overwhelming.
Yeah.
But these are the type of things that happen. What? Yes. That's what happens when you hang around Dave Agent. And so hanging around Dave Agent got me introduced to Daryl.
There you go.
And so that's how that
I
happened.
love that job, though. It's not one of the best parts about being a musician, especially in the Bay Area or
It
anywhere,
really is.
connecting people to people.
Yeah,
People to
absolutely.
people, you know?
Musician fellowship is the best.
It's the best. I mean, now, especially with social media, like I had this one very random gig with Linda Tillery and the Cultural Heritage Choir in Edmonton, Alberta, at a folk festival, which in Canada, 20,000 people show up at these folk festivals. And they have these stages where you play alone one day and have a solo show. And then your group is blended with other groups. That's just how Canadian folk festivals work. I don't know how they work everywhere else, but like you go in and then eventually they put you on a stage and you're combined with other groups. Do you know who Rich Brown is? The bass player?
Yeah, I've heard of Rich Brown.
So Rich is one of my dearest friends because we got thrown. He was in an Indian fusion band and I was in this slamming all body acapella band. And they were like, hey, you're going to do a show together with an Inuit throat singer who's kind of an avant-garde artist named Tanya Tagak, and another DJ who does mostly, you know, Indian music. And I haven't made better. I mean, he's one of my best friends in the whole world. One of the best musicians I know.
Wow.
I did another one like that with Linda Tillery, where I met this singer who was just so fantastic. Her name is Kim Mott, and she was singing behind a guy I didn't really know. But I figured out very quickly how good she was. And now we're friends on Facebook, and I watch her live, and she's been touring with Tamia, like singing backs for her. And she's just... it is my favorite part, and being able to say, oh, Kim, you're in such and so, you know, so-and-so is there. You should do I love that part. I love that part. It makes me really happy. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's been one of the fun parts of doing this podcast.
I bet.
Is connecting those dots. And,
I bet.
You know, I mean, we had the other day, and sometimes you don't know until after. And it's like, oh, I wish I would have connected that. Because like we had Taylor Dane on last week.
Oh, wow.
And that was a big deal for me because I'm like, oh, man, I've had a crush on Taylor Dane since I was in high school.
The whole world has a crush on Taylor Dane, John.
But no, it's just me. It's just me.
No, honey, the whole world, every single one of us was like, oh, Taylor Dane.
Yeah. And then I was talking to Rich Aguan later on that day or the next day or something. And he said, hey, you guys had Taylor Dane on. And I said, yeah. And he goes, did you guys talk about Romy Geroso? He's playing guitar with her. And I was like, oh, I wish I would have known that. That would have been a great icebreaker. But hey, next time. We will always do things next time.
She'll come back.
So we are rounding third base. Yeah, we had a great time with her. We are rounding third base. And I want to just make sure that we touch on whatever you're doing, because right now we're quarantined. So we're sort of all in lockup. When the floodgates open,
what will come out?
What are you going to run towards? Yeah,
I got to tell you for sure, not much has changed in my life. Honestly, it hasn't changed a whole lot, even though I'm at home doing it. So I'm going to say that Daryl and I will have written a chunk of tunes before we're done here to get ready for his next record. I am having a really, really good time writing songs for other people. So I've got a lot of new work, but it's only because I'm singing it at my house instead of somebody else's studio.
Yeah.
My daughter's life hasn't slowed down at all. For your listeners who don't know about my kid, she is one of the busiest human beings on the planet. She's in a socially conscious hip hop group that's been twice Grammy nominated called the Alphabet Rockers. And they go live every weekday at 4:00 from 4 to 5 and have a dance party and conversation with youth. They've got about 1,000 kids hanging out with them online, talking about social justice, learning dance moves, and doing all kinds of stuff around hip hop culture. So that still happens every day. So we have a whole setup in the house for that. She also is a pretty serious activist. And I use an exorbitant amount of my energy willingly to help her with her project, The Butterfly Effect. She and a friend developed this project to try to make a physical representation of all the children that are being held in detention centers at our borders. And their goal was to make enough origami butterflies across the United States. And it just took off like wildfire. Amazing. Ended up in DC having a press conference with Nancy Pelosi. I mean, she's a busy girl. So when the floodgates open, I am guessing that we will get back on track with what was about to happen right as this happened. Was we were going to start going to the detention centers taking the kids and like-minded families and doctors down to give basic medical care and do arts and craft and music and dance with the kids who are stuck in these encampments, some with their families, some in detention centers, some in longer-term facilities. We're kind of desperate to get down there. You know, when Lily started her project, I think she really knew that if she and her generation didn't do something to physically make the connection and say, not everybody in America hates you or doesn't want you here, that those kids were going to grow up to hate them. And then we're back at war at some point. And I think that a big primary goal for all of us involved is to get to the borders. So we're trying to get to Arizona, Texas, San Diego, to border towns down there to do the work with the kids. So that will likely happen as soon as the gates open. And in the meantime, I am learning all kinds of new stuff, like how to dance on TikTok, and we're using acapella to make music with friends. So is going to work on something, and I'm teaching. My choir didn't want to stop, so I have every Monday night I teach 50 people music with my good friend Brian Dyer. We teach 50 singers, and we just keep working, and we keep saying to them, now after all this, when we get to rehearsal, y'all can't have no questions. There will be no questions at choir rehearsal because they're getting so much time to rehearse. I think that's it, John. I mean, my musical career has been pretty golden. The phone rings, which, as I tell my friend Ricky, means I don't suck because the phone keeps ringing. So people must think I can do something right. And we lost John. He went away.
That's all right. I'm still sitting here.
It's me and you, Pete.
When the phone keeps ringing, you're doing the right thing, and it doesn't. Nothing else matters.
So I spend time working with my kid on whatever she wants to do. My father's making a record right now for the first time in his life, and that is a huge pleasure. And I want to plug my dad's record, which is on Berkeley Cat Records. You can go to Berkeley Cat Records online and look up Russ Ellis. And my dad is just writing music for the first time in his life, so I'm having a great time hanging out.
Hold on. The first time in his life? This is
my dad is a sociologist by trade. Both my parents are doctors of sociology. Go figure, I turned out this way. And my dad's always been an artist, though. Always had art in his life. Painting, sculpture, something.
Yeah. So creativity is not new.
Creativity is not new. No, but the music bug and he sang when he was in his 20s, but he was never serious about writing or anything. And then it just started pouring out of him about 4 months ago. And they're literally falling out of my dad. So my brother and I are having a fantastic time.
Amazing.
Working on, I pulled together Daryl, Cedric, Dazon Claiborne, Tammy Hall.
So he's having a similar experience to you, where it's like, I'm punching above my weight. I better get to work.
Calling it, my dad likes to call them the Magic Carpet Band because he's like, I could sing some bullshit and it would just be tremendous. So anyway, I'll be chasing my kid, I'll be chasing my dad, and I'll be writing songs. And I love writing songs for other singers now. So that's really my joy, is writing for other people. So I'm telling your guests, whoever might be listening, I don't have an agenda about it. I just like writing. So tell me what you want it to be about. That, I will say before we go, has been a real gift from Daryl. Daryl was the first person to come to me and say, will you write this for me? And I got to write a song with him, but on my own, come up with sort of the original idea of a song for his wife that he really wanted her to have, called Home. And it launched me into a really nice stratosphere of writing for other people, which brings me great joy.
Yeah, well, that gives us something to plug. The album is called Conversations. It's Agape Soul, and Home is one of the tracks that you sang on. There were several, and it's a fantastic album, and I don't say that lightly. It is truly a world-class album.
Thank you.
So everybody should get that if you want to hear Zoe, if you want to hear Daryl as well.
Actually, and if you're a real serious musician, you know who Tommy Sims is. And if you know who Tommy Sims is the one who's actually singing Home on the record, which for me was pretty much like career defining. I was like, oh, well, that's it. I don't need to do anything else. Tommy Sims is singing something I wrote. We're done. So,
I just want to show I'm not plugging something I don't know about. I got a copy of it right here. So get it.
Great.
Here's what I want to say. First of all, I want to answer Mary, because she said, have you ever topped that birthday song with your wife? Maybe, because she went from 50 was last year. This year she turned 51, and this year Taylor Dane sang happy birthday to her.
Come on.
So that was pretty cool.
She's on a roll.
However, I don't know if that's a topper, and maybe at some point we'll do a milestone birthday, and I'll ask you to write something, and we'll do something that really tops.
I got you.
So there's that. The other thing I want to say is that Lily is a clear example that the making connections with human beings is something that runs in the family. Mm-hmm. So I think that you're experiencing now something in her where we all want our kids to do something a little better. We want to see them excel. And if we've done anything, we'd love to see them take the ball and take it further. And
that's right.
Looks like she's got the stuff. So
she got it.
I really love how you cultivate her gifts and how you encourage her. And she is doing big things. And then the last question we always ask. What's that? Will you come back?
Oh, anytime.
All right, good.
Anytime. But next time Pete has to actually be in the conversation because there's only
I was working
about Pete at this point.
In our prep, Pete said, man, I got so many things to do. Would you mind if I just kind of started things off and then produced and then I'm going to let you run with it? And I said, I probably have 75 questions. So I think we could do
Yeah, but I'm long-winded, so you got 4 questions in.
So I did.
And we got more shows. We got 700 something more coming up.
I actually have, you know what, we could do an entire show about my relationship with Daryl, our musical relationship. And I think if you guys are up for it, it'd be worth having us both on at the same time. Because
Daryl, the first time Daryl was on, he was on with Dave Agent. Oh, and then the second time it was just Daryl, and it was after Conversations had just come out, and that was also great. But yeah, having the two of you on at the same time would be tremendous.
Oh yeah, yeah. He is really my brother. Let me be clear about that. He really is. Yeah.
Well, we will do this again.
Okay.
Like I said, we have a lot. I have a lot of catching up to do in the years in between. What I got into of your music. So
I'll send you some stuff.
Please do. I will consume it. And thank you for doing the show.
No, thanks for your patience. It took me a while to get here with you, didn't it? I
really do it,
man. Yeah, no, this is really fun. Thanks, John. Thanks, Pete.
Thank you.
All right.
Zoe Ellis, everybody.